So the question I get more than anything really is, are protein powders safe?
And that's a great question. And that's probably the most common question we get as well.
Really?
And I suppose the short answer is yes. The longer-winded answer, which is the interesting answer, is that whey protein and plant protein. They're derived from food sources, so they come from food. If we take whey protein specifically, it's made from cheese. So it's a byproduct of the cheese making process, and it's made from milk. And plant protein, I mean, we should definitely touch on that one. Again, plant protein, it's made from a variety of plants. So if you talk about gold standard 100% plant, it's made from rice protein and pea protein. So again, these protein powders are made from food sources. I think it's just the fact that they're powdered and put into tubs that gives people the impression that I suppose they're more of a supplement rather than something that comes from a food source. And then, to give, I suppose, listeners that extra layer of confidence, all of the ingredients that go into and out of our factory, which is in Middlesbrough, they are, highly regulated. We do more than 80,000 tests in our factory. Everything that goes into the factory is tested. Everything that leaves the factory is tested. And we also use an independent body called, it's gone out of my head now, called Sports Science. I have it. Called Sports Science. So they're an independent lab and they test for banned substances. So the majority of our powdered products, including gold standard 100% whey and our gold standard plant protein, is tested by Sports Science. So again, giving that extra layer of credibility and confidence to the consumer that yes, it is absolutely safe to take these products.
And then a question we'll get is, okay, so can you give me like a clean protein powder? Like, I don't want something with too many artificial stuff. I want it clean. And I often wonder what that even means. But I have a few brands that I recommend, and Owen is definitely the leading brand in my opinion for whey protein. I think the gold standard is the most popular protein powder in the world as well.
Yeah.
But what is your answer to that question?
So I really dislike the word clean as well. It reminds me of just cleaning my dishes. So I know that's not what we're talking about. But yeah, I suppose everybody wants, and I think it's something that, particularly over the last 5 to 10 years, we have this idea in our head that we want everything to be minimally processed. And I think that's what consumers mean by clean.
Yeah.
But also then we have to realize that if you want a clean, in inverted commas, whey protein, it's really not going to taste nice. So when you filter down whey protein into and you powder it, it's actually a really, really bitter taste.
Oh, it's disgusting. Yeah.
It's disgusting. Exactly.
I went through a phase of having unflavored whey because I thought I didn't want to have any artificial sweeteners. So I'd only have unflavored whey for a period of my life. And it was horrible getting through those 5-10 minutes of drinking it. And I've never gone back since. Once I realized
so there
that.
you go. And it's this, it's the same with plant proteins that, pea, which is in the majority of blends, it's really hard to mask that taste.
Yeah.
So it kind of tastes like earth or kind of grass, a grassy taste. So although consumers want, they kind of perceive, added sweeteners and thickeners, which are added to lots and lots of products, food products that are out there to make sure that, things taste nice, they have a nice consistency, and that you get shelf life out of something, out of that product. So again, coming back to like what is clean versus, well, what taste is palatable. And of course, people want to take protein. A lot of people take protein daily. You want to enjoy taking your whey protein or your plant protein, and any of the ingredients that are in proteins, whether that be plant or whey, they all have ingredients in there that are, 100% acceptable and at safe levels. because everything we put into our products, it has to be approved by EFSA or the European Food Safety Authority.
What do you think around the research on artificial sweeteners, thickeners? Because again, I think that is what the question is around. Like, what is the verdict on the research when it comes to its usage?
I think the verdict is out. I don't think we have a verdict, and I think that's because of a number of reasons. I think a lot of the studies that have been done on animal models. I think they feed them a huge volume of sweeteners that we would never realistically give to a human. I also think that even when they do human trials, which have been very sparse, they will use very, very high levels of a sweetener. And I know there have been a number of studies now coming out which have looked at the gut microbiota. And again, the studies really have been inconclusive. So I think we have to balance up, for now, we have to look at the evidence that we have and then make a decision about what we eat and how that's going to help us be healthier, how that's going to help us to achieve whatever our performance goal or healthy lifestyle goal. So if you are talking to someone who wants to lose weight and you're telling them to take in some type of low-fat food that's going to help them to reduce their calories and stick to that calorie-restricted diet for a longer period of time, it is better for them then to consume products with perhaps these sweeteners in them. Similarly, if you have a goal of building muscle, particularly again, if you want to build muscle and reduce some body fat, consuming products like a whey protein shake or a plant protein shake is going to help you to support those muscle gains over a long period of time in order for you to build that muscle, maintain that muscle, and get where you want to be with your performance goals. And that is I think when we look at nutrition, it's always about like this reductionist view. It's about, what can we pick on this week? Is it going to be sugar? Is it going to be sweeteners? We never look at, the whole picture. And the whole picture is not just about nutrition either. It's about sleep. It's about exercise. It's about, stress. So I think we really want to control or demonize one specific ingredient so that then if we fail or we fall off the wagon, whether that's, with weight loss or whether it's with a performance goal, well, then we kind of have something to blame. And I also feel as well, and this kind of is frustrating for someone who's a nutritionist, that everyone has an opinion on nutrition. And it kind of is whoever shouts the loudest on social media gets their point across. And I think, that really, I suppose, it doesn't serve the people or is not of benefit to the people who maybe really need products that are low fat, who really struggle with their weight, or people who struggle to even, run faster, get fitter, get stronger, regardless of their weight. So again, I think we kind of need to sometimes step back and figure out what's important and what can I do in more of a holistic sense.
So what is the verdict that you mentioned? You said the verdict's out. What is the verdict on artificial sweeteners, thickeners?
I suppose the verdict is that the science is not as comprehensive as we would like. And there is no, I think that if sweeteners or thickeners or any of these ingredients were any way damaging to our health, they wouldn't be allowed in our food supply. Mm-hmm. In Europe and the UK, we have one of the strictest food regulation controls compared to anywhere else in the world. And that doesn't just go for what's put into the food. It also goes for how we can communicate around what is in the food. So, the European Commission and the European Food Safety Authority, they're very strict and stringent with the levels of sweeteners and thickeners that we put into products.
Yeah, everything I've seen is that the research is typically done on the dosages are so high they're just not relatable to the real world, and in the dosages we have, it's completely fine.
Exactly. And again, just to reiterate that we are stringently controlled. I think a lot of people think, the supplement industry, it doesn't have, and maybe in the past it didn't have that, our reputation wasn't that reputable, but we are stringently controlled. We are so controlled that whatever we say on the pack, I'll give you an example for protein. Like, we all know that, and all of the science says that protein allows us to build muscle. It allows us to repair muscle. Increasing your protein intake along with resistance exercise will allow you to build that muscle to increase strength. But we can't actually claim strength on any of our marketing material, on any of our labels. And there are lots of ingredients that we put into our products that there's a lot of science around. And we can't talk about them because EFSA, the European Food Safety Authority, are so stringent around how they want to protect the consumer.
Very interesting. And I think the supplement industry developed this bad rap, like I said, when it first sort of came out, and it was all muscle mania and bodybuilding was like the only industry using it. And as it's become a bit more mainstream, all of that stuff has been tightened up. And it kind of brings me, I think we've closed the sort of chapter on protein powder as a conclusive, safe supplement for people to have and help them hit their protein target. But what about creatine? And maybe, again, this is another common supplement and one of the most proven ones out there. But again, we get questions like, what is creatine? Why do I need to take it? Should I take it? What does it do? So maybe start with, in layman's term, what is creatine? And then explain when it's useful, is it safe? And the same sort of questions that people typically ask around it.
Sure. So creatine is an amino acid. And, just to refresh people, protein is made from amino acids. So it's a natural substance, and it's very high in meat type products, particularly in red meat. And all it is a combination of 3 amino acids, methionine, arginine, and glycine. And it is found naturally within the body, particularly high in your muscle tissues. And it's also found in your brain. And what we know is that when we supplement with creatine, is that we can increase the levels of creatine within our muscle. And we know that creatine acts as an energy source within that muscle. And if we take a step backwards, the energy source of your body is ATP. And we constantly need to regenerate ATP from things like carbohydrates, fats, and protein to allow us to move our body, to do any type of body movement, but particularly exercise. And creatine also provides creatine allows our body to produce this energy source really, really fast. So we know then that when we supplement with creatine, we can increase the stores in our muscle by between 20 and 40%, depending on what your baseline concentrations were. We know that if you're vegan or vegetarian, your levels will be much lower in the muscle because you don't have that natural intake from meat type products. So actually, creatine supplementation works better when your levels are low naturally within the muscle. A lot of people say, well, can I just not eat red meat? Will that not increase my creatine stores? We know that to get between 3 and 5 grams of creatine naturally, you would have to eat about 30 to 40 ounces of steak. So it's a lot of steak to be sitting down to increase those stores. And once you increase your stores, you have this ability to rapidly regenerate ATP, or the energy of the cell, which allows you to do really high intensity exercise fast. So exercise that lasts from between 3 and 10 seconds. So sprinting, jumping, lifting, all of these really high intensity activity, they benefit from supplementing with creatine, because you have that immediate energy source within the muscle that's going to allow you to have more power to do these high intensity activity. So in that way, then creatine is a great training tool, because the more intense you can be in training, the more you can build to increase your power output, increase your speed, increase your strengths.
Yeah. And why should everyone take it then? Because you've given a very convincing argument.
Yeah. So it's not an argument, it's science. That comes from science.
Yeah.
So the great thing about creatine is that, when we started to...
I love it, by the way. I love it.
And I love it. And my parents take it. I think it's one of these supplements that everybody can take and should take, because there are so many benefits. And, just for everyone to understand, it has been studied for 30 years. There are like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds. I think there is like something like nearly 1,000 papers out there on creatine. A lot of them have been done on their safety. And we know that in healthy adults, there are no negative repercussions of taking creatine. And the benefits of it, they're far reaching. They're not just in the gym, on the track, or on the pitch. And while we stay within exercise, actually, it's not just about taking it to increase power and strength either. We know that within endurance circles, endurance athletes who take it before intense periods of training or before very prolonged periods of training, we know that they have a greater resistance to injury. They seem to be able to recover better, because when studies have been done on these athletes and they measure markers of muscle damage, they find that these markers of muscle damage are reduced. So again, somehow it allows the muscle to be a little bit more robust, and allowing them to, I suppose, train more intensely and continuously, because they're recovering that bit better. It also, when we take it with carbohydrate, it allows us to replenish glycogen a little bit better. And obviously for endurance athletes, that's the holy grail. How do I get more carbohydrates stored into my muscle? Interestingly enough, it also allows for greater hyperhydration. And this is one of the myths, I suppose, around creatine, is that it dehydrates you. When in actual fact, it's been shown in a lot of studies to actually hyperhydrate athletes, which can be really beneficial for those that are training in the heat, particularly events like Ironman or triathlons, which can be done often in hotter countries. And then the more recent research then is all around neuroprotection. So it's all around brain injury, concussion, and again, for cognitive function in elderly people. So we're not so sure how this works. Your brain has its own natural concentration of creatine and its natural production of creatine. And we know that only a small percentage of creatine that we take in actually gets across and gets into the brain. However, when some type of a traumatic brain injury occurs, or indeed you get old, because that's also seen as stress on the brain. The science thinks, it's only speculating, because it's very difficult to obviously do a lot of these studies, that your brain actually can't use glucose as much, because glucose is the primary fuel that the brain uses. It can't use it for some reason, and it swaps and it starts to use creatine. So creatine starts to be that fuel source to produce that ATP, or that energy currency. And for some way it's neuroprotective. Now, bearing in mind that all of these things are in, I suppose, the research at the moment. And when we go back to what we can claim and, what are the approved claims around, particularly that are approved by EFSA, is just on high intensity training. So it's really that it supports high intensity training, but its benefits are far reaching for sure. And it's definitely one of my, top supplements that I would recommend to people, particularly if performance is a goal.
And how do you take it?
So you can take it. We used to think you had to load it into the muscle, so that you would take a larger dose of creatine for 7 days. However, we now know that you can take 3 grams of creatine monohydrate, which is the form that has been the most researched. So you can take 3 grams of creatine monohydrate for every day for 28 days, and that will load your muscle with creatine. And of course, the benefits of creatine are actually not experienced until it is loaded into the muscle. And interestingly as well, about 30% of people are non-responders. So again, it's one of those things. I suppose every supplement is quite individual, but this in particular can be very individual with how you experience a benefit or not.
That's a really good sort of segue into asking, how do you know which supplements you need?
That is a great question. We could just do a podcast on that alone. So it depends. It really depends. So I suppose in general, we can make some assumptions about the population in general. We can say that from recent studies that have been done in the UK that people are low in vitamin D, that only a quarter of people take in 5 portions of fruit and veg daily, that they are low in fiber. The recommendations are 30 grams. I think the intake in general is about 17 grams. We know that they are low in oily fish. So it's recommended that you take in 140 grams a week, and people take in about 56 grams. And then it's also from studies, again, done in the UK, people are also, a third of people can be low in iron or iron deficient, and 1 in 3 people can actually be low in calcium. So from those general recommendations, you could say, okay, well, everybody should probably take vitamin D during the winter months. And if you don't eat oily fish, supplement with an omega-3 supplement. And then it gets, a multivitamin is a great safety net for someone, particularly if they know that they don't eat a lot of fruit and vegetables. But again, nothing is as good as having a good base diet. Food provides us with so much more than vitamins and minerals. It provides us with, phytonutrients, antioxidants. And we know that these chemicals, which are produced from plants and foods naturally, we know that they fight disease. So again, and we know that when we get them from food, we absorb them optimally. We don't know that from multivitamins or from synthetic vitamins. So again, although we can make general recommendations around, vitamin D, omega-3, everything else is quite personalized. Like even calcium and iron, like it really is a case-by-case recommendation, and looking at, I suppose, how can you, first of all, change the diet so that the changes can be sustainable, and then what can we layer on top? And then I suppose, you can think about protein. Like protein is probably one of the most recommended and used supplements, particularly for those of us who exercise a lot. It can be very challenging to hit protein goals if you have higher protein goals, or if you're female and you don't eat a lot of meat, or you don't tend to eat large quantities of high meat-based products, or if you're a vegan or vegetarian. I mean, you have experience with that. So there are things you can generalize with, but a lot of the time supplementation is quite personal.
And personal on a basis of, you need to do blood work to determine that, or is it lifestyle driven? Like what? Yeah,
I think it depends on where you are with your nutrition. So if you have, if you are a person who has low fiber, low fruit and veg, you look at your diet, or I could look at your diet and instantly say, okay, the majority of times people need to increase their protein at breakfast, increase their fruit and veg at every meal. You want to increase your fiber. You could increase your calcium based foods. You could, increase green leafy vegetables, which is going to increase your intake of magnesium. It's going to increase your intake of B vitamins, calcium. So there are really easy changes that you can make. But then I suppose it depends if that person has a specific challenge, or if they have a specific deficiency, that they feel they have a deficiency, or there's something wrong. Well, then you may address that through adding supplements on top of that. But it's always good to get a blood test. So it's always good to get a blood test to figure out, is there anything that actually pops? And things like B12, iron, calcium will generally come out of those blood tests. But sometimes it can just be eat more food. A lot of people wonder what, I suppose a big thing is I don't have enough energy. A lot of people may not be eating enough calories. They mightn't be getting enough sleep. So again, it's about looking at the total person and not just honing in on one specific thing. And of course, multivitamins are great, or vitamins in general, or supplements in general. We like to tick a box, we like the easy option, and sometimes they can be the easy option. Whereas again, it's all about, layering the supplements on top of good routines.
If you're someone who's vegetarian or vegan, so you've mentioned them as separate cases a few times, what are the supplements they need to consider as staples in their diet to cover their bases? Maybe start with vegetarians and then go to vegans, or vice versa.
So I would definitely say vitamin D. I would definitely say B12. Omega-3, if they're not eating fish. So for a vegan, perhaps a vegetarian would eat fish. And then I think, there could be concerns around calcium and iron, but it depends on the type of vegan or vegetarian they are. So I think if you are really focused on your diet and you're taking in a variety of plant-based foods, such as, green leafy vegetables, you have a high quantity of fruit and vegetables in your diet, you're taking in like a range of legumes, beans, lentils, then I think you probably would be able to cover your iron and calcium needs. But I think if you don't have such a variety in your diet, then perhaps zinc, calcium, iron are also supplements that you should be taking. Interestingly, I also think iodine is one for vegans and vegetarians, and possibly for the entire population. We get iodine from vegetables, predominantly vegetables. We actually get it from the soil. So as the crops are being grown, they're taking up the iodine into the actual plant. But when we overfarm, the iodine in the soil obviously reduces because it doesn't get enough time to replenish. And iodine is really important for brain function. And it's really important for our thyroid. So again, having that, really important for the production of thyroid hormones, which is really important for our metabolism and how we feel. And I think if you're not taking in things like seaweed, so you can get, it's easy to get seaweed now. You can just get it in the health shop. It's dried up. You can put it into stews and soups. And iodized salt is another way of getting it in. But definitely, I think that is probably one of the nutrients that we don't hear enough about. And I really became aware of it when I was pregnant, because in Australia, it's one of those, it's like folic acid, everybody takes it. Oh, wow. Whereas I was like, well, why aren't we advised to take it over here? Because it's really important for the development of the fetus's brain. Really? So again, I kind of started looking into it then, and I feel that we don't talk about it as much. And I do think, it can have knock-on effects of being deficient over a long period.
Just on the topic of pregnancy, what other watch outs should people who are pregnant be careful of when it comes to supplements, and then maybe touch on nutrition as well?
So I suppose the most important thing around nutrition in pregnancy is always, get your advice from a healthcare professional. Making sure whether it's, with training or nutrition, you're always, having these discussions with a healthcare professional or your doctor. The big watch outs in pregnancy, I mean, there are a few. So, you can talk about reducing your intake of caffeine, which I definitely struggled with. So the recommendation for if you're not pregnant is to consume about 400 milligrams every day, bearing in mind that there's about 80 milligrams in a strong cup of coffee. So you're reducing that down to 200 milligrams. You're also,
So you're saying the regular recommendation is 400 milligrams. That's quite high, no? That's two caffeine tablets.
Yeah, well, it's 400 milligrams. So that's a global recommendation. It's 400 milligrams of caffeine. For
performance benefits, are you talking about? Or are you talking about just day to day?
No, day to day. So the global recommendations from the FDA, which is the Food Drug Authority, and EFSA is 400 milligrams daily. So if you think about coffee that you get in any coffee chain, they can range. The caffeine in coffee can range from anywhere from between 75 milligrams right up to 200 milligrams, depending on how many shots of coffee you're having. Yeah. And then I suppose you can look at tea, which is very low. It's probably around 40 milligrams, including green teas. And then you can move to pre-workouts. So in Europe and the UK, we can only have the max per serving is 200 milligrams. But in the US, they can have up to 300 milligrams in one serving of a pre-workout. Okay. So again, and you can also get caffeine, obviously, from things like, energy drinks. And again, they can range from between 40 milligrams up to 100 milligrams, and small amounts also from chocolate. So it can add up fairly quickly, depending on what type of products you're consuming. But 400 milligrams, you must have a very low intake of caffeine, Akash.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, because I remember when I compete in bodybuilding, I often use caffeine towards the end to just help with various energy and hunger suppressor and get my heart rate up before cardio. And each tablet was 200 milligrams. And the first time I take them, I'm flying. I'm absolutely flying. And I have a coffee every day. Maybe they're already pretty strong. But I just thought that number was pretty high as a recommendation.
Yeah, I suppose the recommendation is so that people can include a different variety of caffeine in their diet every day. But I suppose also everyone has such a different tolerance to caffeine, and obviously that is dependent on their genetics, but also on how much caffeine they take in, because we know we can become so tolerant to it. So it really is one of those.
So because I know we've darted around and I want to kind of bring us back to a few points. First, I actually want to ask, is caffeine good or bad? And then I want to go back to pregnancy and then I'll go back to veganism. So maybe start with, is caffeine good or bad? And obviously there's a recommendation on it, but is it good? When is it bad, etc.? So
caffeine is, all the research and all the science tells us it's good, which, everyone always wants to find something wrong with something. It can't be 100% good. When in actual fact, there's lots of studies out there, and a new one just recently came out of Copenhagen in February. And that was around its positive effects on heart health. But we know that consuming, or the research has found and is showing us time and time again, that consuming 2 to 5 cups of coffee daily can actually be beneficial towards your health. And I think it is because of these polyphenols. So again, if you're consuming coffee that may not be of great quality, so just instant coffee, I don't think that would have as many of the benefits, but definitely, the coffee that you're brewing yourself or, from beans, it does have a high level of polyphenols, and consuming it daily has been shown to have a lot of health benefits. That's the first question.
Yeah. That's brilliant though, because often, I've gone through periods where I say, I'm not going to have coffee anymore and give it a break, mainly because I probably the cups were getting more and more each day. I was becoming quite reliant. I don't like the idea of waking up and having to need it to feel normal. Now I wait a bit and then I have my first coffee, which feels a lot better. I'm more hydrated, etc. But also because I love blending up my own coffee beans, grinding my own coffee beans, and then making my V60 pour over. So that's great to hear. And just to confirm, are the benefits found in the coffee itself because of the polyphenols and the antioxidants that come with the beans versus, say, having a pre-workout caffeine?
Yes. So the benefits are definitely from the polyphenols.
So it's from coffee, not from, let's say, the caffeine itself that you might find in a pre-workout or a caffeine-only tablet.
Exactly. So I think it's different. It's the blend. So I suppose you're coming back to that food element. It is the benefits of the health benefits are coming from the polyphenols. When you take a pre-workout or when you take a caffeine tablet, you're taking it specifically for those benefits that you want to get from training. Yeah. So, it's going to increase your concentration, increase your focus, allow you to train that bit harder, allow you to push through intensities or durations that you may not be able to had you not had that coffee. So that's the way that it's reducing that, the pain barrier, because it's reducing that threshold of effort. So you perceive the exercise session to be a little bit easier, so you're able to push through that barrier. However, for the health effects, it's definitely around the polyphenols. So the polyphenols are the chemicals that are naturally found in the beans. They are promoting health.
Yeah. Okay. And then to circle back, we got on caffeine because we're talking about pregnancy, and you used to mention reducing caffeine intake was one of the first things. What else should you consider going through pregnancy? So just give some context on why I'm asking. Actually, my wife's pregnant right now, and the one thing that NHS have recommended us is taking pregnant care. Yeah, you've probably seen that from Vitibiotics. So it'd be good to know your thoughts on that, but also if there's anything else she should be or should have been taking from earlier.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose, thinking about what you should avoid, first of all, we know that you should avoid any type of, cheeses or pates, again, just because there could be mold in them and high levels of listeria. And then also things like, I don't know if you'd be eating swordfish or marlin or shark. Some of these, just in case, Akash.
There's no sharks in this fridge.
Exactly. Just in case, again, they would contain a very high level of mercury. In saying that, tuna can also contain a high level of mercury. So it is recommended, if you're eating a lot of tinned tuna, that you may reduce it to like 1 can of tinned tuna per week. So that's really important. And then obviously we've covered off the caffeine. Then of course, if you're talking about, well, what supplements should I take? So you're talking about fish oils. Now, in particular, you're talking about DHA. So when for those of us not pregnant, you're always, when you look at an omega-3 supplement, you're looking for an omega-3 that is higher in EPA. And the EPA is the natural, it's, I suppose, used more by the body in general. Whereas the DHA is actually for production of your brain cells. So that's really important, because the DHA is obviously going to have a huge impact on developing the brain of the fetus. So you have your fish oils, you obviously have your folic acid, you have, for me, you definitely have iodine. Vitamin D, really important. And then depending on, it is great now that there's such an array of comprehensive vitamins and mineral supplements available to women who are pregnant, because I think a lot of the time, depending on your pregnancy, you may not be eating a variety of foods, because a lot of the time you don't feel well. It's the one time where you're really conscious of trying to eat a lot of oily fish, or you're trying to eat a lot of fruits and vegetables, but actually a lot of the time you don't feel like you need to eat them, or you can eat them because you're tired, you're nauseous, you're emotional. So it is great to have a multivitamin that can be a safety net to ensure that you are getting all your requirements.
Yeah, that's really useful. And one thing you've mentioned throughout this whole episode is vitamin D. And I know everyone I think knows now that vitamin D is good for you, and it's always related to sunlight. You know, it's like if there's no sunlight, take vitamin D. But why? Why is vitamin D so important? It's been heralded as like one of the key supplements everyone should take. But what are the benefits?
So
what are the dangers?
We started off and, everyone thought, well, vitamin D, it helps you to absorb your calcium and use your calcium, and it allows us to support bone health. And that's really where, for a long time, that's why vitamin D was a real focus. And it wasn't even a focus until I think people started to do blood tests and figure out, actually, for a lot of us who live at our latitude, we're actually quite deficient in vitamin D. And then the studies extended to figuring out that vitamin D worked a little bit similarly to more of a hormone. So it's known as a pro-hormone because it works more like a hormone than a vitamin. And it's really important in promoting a proper immune response. So it's really important for activating our immune system. We know that, bringing it back to exercise, we know that those that are deficient in vitamin D, they don't have the same response to muscle protein synthesis. So again, there have been a lot of studies that have shown us that vitamin D plays a role in a lot of chronic diseases as well. Now, these studies, it can be very difficult for us to pinpoint exactly why someone suffers from some type of disease, but we know that in a lot of them, they are vitamin D deficient. So again, I would say definitely for, bone health, particularly as we age, because we know that our bones get weaker as we age. Also, we lose muscle mass as we age. So we know that from the age of 40, we're losing 1% of our muscle mass per year. And when we get to the age of 70, we've lost 25% of our muscle. And we know that, eating vitamin D, which allows us to absorb calcium, but also the effect that vitamin D has on muscle, along with increasing our eating enough protein, that will allow us to maintain our muscle mass and our bone health, which will allow us to age healthier. So allowing us more mobility as we age. And obviously, the more mobile we are, the more we can retain the muscle mass. And the healthier we are, because the more we can actually do stuff. And then our immune system is the big one. So we know that it has a significant role in our immune system.
What is good for the immune system?
What is good for the immune system? So again, it is about looking at, I suppose, that standing back and looking at that holistic view.
Yeah.
And obviously, we're all obsessed with products that are, give immune boosting. The
fizzy vitamin C tablets.
Exactly. But the interesting thing about immunity is that calories are really important for the immune system. So studies have found that if you're overweight or underweight, that can negatively impact your immune system. We know that protein feeds the immune cells. It's really important for immunity. Obviously, stress, sleep, these are all going to, negatively impact our immune system if we don't manage them. And then you're talking about things like vitamin D, obviously, omega-3s, fruit and vegetables, polyphenols, again, these chemicals that are found in plants. We know that increasing your intake of polyphenols, or even, you look at studies around the Mediterranean diet, which would be very high in these polyphenols through fruit and vegetables, whole grain cereals, olive oils, oily fish. They again have been linked to a stronger immune system. And also garlic, herbs and spices, garlic. So you can easily protect your immune system by using food, by sleeping properly, by making sure you're a healthy weight for you. And also, decrease, not drinking too much. Because obviously that has a knock-on effect on your sleep and your recovery. And also getting out there and exercising. So there are lots of things, and gut health. Like we can talk all day about gut health. So obviously we know that 70% of your immunity is in your gut. And all those microbes in there, they need to be fed. And I know you're going to bring me on to probiotics, but I will say, before I get there, I'm going to say fiber. We can talk all day about probiotics, and the big thing about probiotics is it really, the research is at its infancy. And, when people say, will I take a probiotic? And I always say, why don't you eat more fiber? They don't want to hear that answer because, it's a little bit more challenging. But again, all the research coming out now to say eat 30 different plant-based foods. I mean, your gut should be the one of the healthiest. But when you're plant-based and you're eating a variety of foods, you're eating 30 different plant-based foods easily. And you can, regardless of whether you're a vegan or vegetarian or, you eat meat, you can hit that as long as you're conscious of the variety of foods that you're eating, things like nuts, seeds, herbs, spices, garlics, olive oils, fruits, vegetables, breads, all of these count towards your 30 different plant-based sources that can promote the health of your gut. You don't need probiotics per se, because you're also getting probiotics from foods like onions, garlics, bananas, fermented foods. It can be very achievable to feed your gut without moving towards probiotics. Although, obviously we know in some instances like traveler's diarrhea or after an antibiotic, probiotics can be very useful.
Yeah. I was going to ask around pre and probiotics. We have so many questions around it. People asking, are pre and probiotics necessary for weight loss, for overall health? But I think you've answered that pretty comprehensively. A lot of people might be wondering, I know you affiliate with Optimum Nutrition and BSN and SlimFast, is it? But people can make their own decisions about where they want to buy their supplements from. What things do they need to know to sift through the good and bad, to read supplement labels and feel confident, just like they would read a food pack label? How can you sift through just the absolute mess that's out there sometimes? Because Optimum Nutrition and BSN especially, they're more performance-based, right? Especially ON, it's very performance-based. So for covering all the other needs that may not be applicable, what do they need to look for?
I suppose it is just like choosing any supplement. So whether it is a performance supplement or a health supplement, you want to choose a supplement from a reputable brand.
Yeah.
You want to make sure that their manufacturing processes are, very high quality. And that often does mean that they're a little bit more expensive, but you are, you're buying into and you're paying for that very high level of quality. You want to take a supplement that has gone through rigorous quality protocols, rigorous procedures with regard to, how they choose ingredients, what ingredients they choose to put into a supplement, and then, their manufacturing process, where that manufacturing process is. So again, it is about, regardless of what the supplement does and what you want it to do or how you want it to support health or performance, it is about choosing reputable brands. Because there are lots and lots of brands that you can choose from. And you're right, it's very confusing for the consumer. Like, how do you choose when you really don't know where to start? So I suppose it is about choosing a reputable brand. And it's also about choosing obviously, if I take, Optimum Nutrition as an example, people who real athletes, and I don't say real, facetiously. I mean, people who their whole life is about performance, their life is about achieving performance goals as athletes. They choose Optimum Nutrition because they know it's such a reputable brand. They know it's such a premium brand. It's been around for 35 years. There's not a lot of supplement companies that have been around for that long. So obviously when they choose a brand like Optimum Nutrition, they know that what it says on the tub is exactly what's in the tub, that we're obsessed with quality, that we are really there to support our consumer and to support them achieve their performance goals. And it should be similar with other high quality premium brands. So you want to choose a supplement company that are kind of partnering with you. They're partnering with you so that you can, once you take this supplement, along with obviously, be sensible. You have to do the hard work and have a good diet and, mind yourself, get your sleep, do your exercise. But, this supplement is going to support you in achieving those goals.
What's
the thing is, there's no simple answer.
Yeah, of course. What's in your personal supplement cupboard?
Oh, good question. My personal supplement cupboard, there is vitamin D. No surprise to you there. Vitamin D, omega-3, protein, and both plant and so both gold standard 100% plant and gold standard 100% whey. I tend to mix and match depending. And that's it. Yeah, that's they're my daily.
Do you take creatine?
I take creatine on and off. Okay. So I take creatine on and off when I'm training hard, when I know I'm going to do a little bit of an intensive, maybe a 3-block period, I take a scoop of creatine. I throw it into my whey protein shake every day. So it's easy. I know that a lot of, and why I started to take it? I actually started to take it because I was working with a lot of female athletes, and a lot of female athletes were telling me that they didn't want to take it because they were afraid they were going to put on weight. So this is one of these anecdotal, I suppose, myths around creatine, that it's going to cause you to put on weight. Because some people feel like it does make you put on some water weight, which the research disproves. So I started to take it as just a little bit of a N=1 research trial. And I've continued to take it, because I do feel that I have that little bit more resilience when I take it. So thankfully I am one of those responders to creatine. So yeah, I take it. I probably take it maybe, 7 to 8 months out of 12 months.
Okay.
Just because I think as well, sometimes you need a break from your supplements, just from the actual taking of the supplements.
Yeah.
Not that you need a break from taking them, but yeah, the psychological aspect of, I couldn't be bothered today, that kind of a way.
What's the one? And by the way, creatine is one of those supplements that you can easily forget, right? Especially if you don't train. Yeah,
exactly.
If it's not a training day, you're like, I forgot to take that.
Yeah, exactly. And you kind of you do need to take it with a little bit of sugar. So, it absorbs better into the muscle. So yeah, I find that my protein tubs, I have 2 little boys, and I find they use them to climb up on stuff. So the protein is actually pretty heavy, particularly the 5-pounder. But the other one, like the gold standard plant and the creatine, they actually go missing because they can carry them around and use them to climb up on stuff. So yeah, once they're missing, that the creatine's missing, you kind of can forget.
Is there any age considerations here with regards to protein powders, creatine, any of the supplements you've discussed in this podcast?
Yeah, great question. So we only recommend to add healthy adults over the age of 18.
Yeah.
And that's simply because under the age of 18, we really believe in food first. So we really believe that, particularly guys and girls who are 16, 17 and 18, they really should be learning about how to use their diet and use food to satisfy their energy needs, their protein needs, their performance needs, their health needs. And I've seen this happen a lot when I work with teams or when I work with individual younger athletes, they do want that easy alternative. They do just want to, take a supplement to tick a box so that they don't have to learn the cooking skills or even learn the shopping skills. What should I put in my shopping basket? It comes back to those simple skills that maybe we take for granted that a lot of younger people now don't have. And it's to their detriment, particularly, because our habits around eating have changed. We don't tend to sit down as families anymore. We don't tend to eat larger meals. We're always on the go when we want convenience. So again, I suppose, at Optimum Nutrition, we do want people to understand that there is no substitute for food. And, we give education to under 18s and we talk only about food and how to gain those skills that are really, really important.
Amazing. No, I totally agree. As a finish up, to finish up a couple of rapid fire supplement questions.
Okay.
What's your most underrated supplement that you always recommend?
Underrated that I recommend. I think creatine is underrated. I think it's underrated for the benefits outside of performance. So I think creatine is an unbelievable supplement. And I also think beta alanine is underrated. Yeah.
Oh, forgot about that one.
Yeah. I think beta alanine, which to give a kind of a rapid rundown on it, again, it's an amino acid. It's naturally found in foods. But what it does is it increases the buffer in our muscle called carnosine. And, we've all felt that burn. So when you're doing high intensity exercise and you feel the burn, we always talk about the acid, and we know it's not the acid, it's the hydrogen ion. But basically what carnosine does is it goes around and it mops up the acid. So then if you, by supplementing with beta alanine, you're increasing the carnosine, which is mopping up this acid, and you can continue to train at higher intensities. So again, I think that's a really nice one, particularly for middle distance runners or anyone doing kind of, 10Ks and above. And it's been proven, exercise predominantly for more than 4 minutes, you're going to get an improvement. But you have to build it up. So you have to build it up within the muscle. So taking it daily, and it can cause itchiness. So that, so you can get that really horrible tingling sensation. So again, being careful of how you're increasing that dose daily. But yeah, I think beta alanine, there's so much research on it. And it's probably a little bit underrated.
And what would you say is the one supplement that you always say to people, stop taking that or you're wasting your money?
I suppose maybe vitamin C.
Yeah.
I think people really hammer on the vitamin C, particularly during winter. I often like to come back to your comment about fizzy vitamin C. I think people really like just the fizziness. I think, we get a lot of vitamin C. We get a lot of vitamin C from, I'm going to say orange juice. I wouldn't recommend you get your vitamin C from orange juice, but orange juice is a staple in, the UK and Ireland. It is a staple in the fridge of many, but we do get a lot of vitamin C from peppers and kiwis and oranges. And I do think people who eat, a lot of fruit, you don't even have to eat a lot of veg. I do think we hit our intakes of vitamin C. So yeah, I would probably say vitamins. I'd never really recommend a vitamin C. I think people take it. You know why I think they feel better when they take it? Because they get water. I think it's because they hydrate themselves. And I think it's coming back to your kind of comment on, I hydrate myself or have, water before I drink my coffee. I think a lot of people, they get up, they have their coffee, and they may not actually drink any fluid on top of their coffee or their tea until lunchtime. So I think even having that glass of vitamin C, glass of water with your vitamin C on top, I think that's making them feel better. Now, obviously, that's actually a really scientific opinion.
I think it's a really good point. People are just chronically dehydrated a lot of the time, and they just feel rough because of that.
Exactly. So yeah, I probably would say we probably don't need as much vitamin C. But hey, you know what? if there's a placebo effect and if it works for you, so I say go for it. Continue. Just go for it. Because you know what? We are all different. And what makes one person feel like they can achieve and power through their day might be different to another person. So, who am I to say, don't take your vitamin C? I worked with this is just a random story. I worked with an under 18 team before, and we used to always, when I came in, I'd be all like, they'd have biscuits and Jaffa cakes and, even chocolate, and I'd strip everything out. And I'd say, look, realistically, at halftime, you only need a banana, a sports drink. So everyone kind of bought in, and I had this one guy, and he came to me and he said, I cannot play my second half without jelly beans. And, you're kind of in that quandary of like, will I even go into the science here? Will I even go into why he can play it? And you know what? I said, if you need jelly beans, you just go for the jelly beans, but it's brilliant what people get into their heads. And if it's not doing you any harm, well then, keep doing what you feel you need to do to get to where you need to go.
Crionna, this has been amazing. I really enjoyed discussing all things supplements. Where can people find out more about your work?
So realistically, I work with Optimum Nutrition. Head over to Optimum Nutrition if you want to obviously browse through all of our amazing high quality supplements or get some more advice on our advice pages. And you'll find me being very quiet on Instagram under Dr Crionna Tobin, since I had two little boys who basically take up all my time.
Amazing. So for the listeners, as you know, this podcast is partnered with Optimum Nutrition. So if you don't want to head over to their US and UK stores, you can use RNT20 for 20% off. Thanks so much for being here, Crionna, not having me being here, Crionna. I think there's been a lot of value and a lot of myths busted from many of the questions that our members have had for you. So it's been amazing.
Brilliant. No, thank you. Thank you so much, Akash, for having me. It's been a pleasure.